All right. Hey guys, what's going on? So today we're going to be looking at Bitcoin. We've recently pushed up in a very nice bullish move, pushing up to new all-time highs for Bitcoin. So today I want to analyze some of this price action, on the lower time frames and just discuss what I'm looking at and where I think the price is going to go from here and why. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I'm on TradingView, right? I'm on this layout here, the strategy RSI. So this is my personal strategy that I created, and you can see that the stop loss was actually just triggered. So we'll open up this strategy tester, and we'll see that the short was taken at around 107,000 on June 25th, and it basically closed the take profit or a stop loss just yesterday at 117,000. So this strategy has a stop loss of 10%. So that means since the price rallied up 10% and we had a short, then the stop loss triggered and we basically locked in a loss of $1,000 on a zero point 0.1 Bitcoin short. So what that tells me, and you can see that the strategy is already triggering another short. So this strategy triggers um, basically short sale opportunities when we have a daily and 4 hour combined overbought RSI. It takes profit when the 2 hour RSI gets oversold, or if the price rallies 10%, in the wrong direction, meaning it rallies 10%, then we get stopped out. So that's what I'm seeing. And I don't always take every one of these trades, but I do like the chart to kind of show me when is a good, when the market's overbought and sold, and when it is, just to take the trade, right? So that I can build the data. So you can see if we go back, in time, this strategy really only works when the longer term direction of the market changes to either sideways direction, or the cycle turns bearish. So right now I'm just testing it. We don't think the bearish cycle has started yet. We still think we have another 3 to 6 months in this bullish, weekly push higher to maybe 150 or 200k. So it makes sense to see this strategy losing every now and then, right? But if you look back, you can see there's been some pretty good trades that this strategy has locked in for us. We shorted it right here, took profit right here. Another great short opportunity when the market rallied right here, right? We shorted point 0.1, and then there's the take profit right at the bottom where we started to rally. So I look at this indicator and I think, hey, this is pretty damn accurate, right? Like it works better in sideways markets. You can see if I zoom out back here, it really worked well when we sold off from this 100k level down into like the 75 level. We had a lot of good, profitable trades. But as we start to rally, you know, I don't look at this as we have to take every trade that this indicator signals for us. But if you look at the strategy tester and you can look at the performance, you can see that overall there's about a 50% chance that when this triggers, it's going to be right and it's going to be profitable, or 50% chance that you're going to get stopped out. So if you look at the overview of the strategy, you can see that profitable trades about 44%. So that tells me that, hey, when there's a 4 hour overbought, there usually means there's a good trading opportunity, but you got to be careful because 50% of the time the trade is actually going to go against you. So what that tells me is, hey, look, we shorted it right here at 107. We got stopped out here. So that was one of the 50% of the trades that essentially was unprofitable. So if that was an unprofitable trade, then the odds are in our favor that this new short up here, as we got stopped out after the 10% rise, has a better chance, right, of being profitable because now we're at a higher level. It's lower risk entry point. We just had a losing trade. So now it's possible that we're going to get a profitable trade. So that's kind of where I start my day. I say, hey, look, we had a beautiful rally. And, for our long term holdings, that's really good. We like to see that we're gaining. But for my little active trading account, I'm thinking, hey, maybe this is a good time to hedge some of that upside and just trade this back maybe 4 or 5% downside into some support levels. But let's get into that. So first things first, we triggered the stop loss and then re-triggered another short opportunity. Why? Because the 4 hour and daily RSIs are above 75%. So that covers that. Let's put the volume back on here as well. And you can see, based on the RSI by DGT, that we finally broke above. See these red bars coming across? These were resistance many times, right? And we finally broke above it, and that's what started this huge rally, which is exactly what I was talking about in my video when I was covering the RSI in the technical analysis course. So you're gonna want to check that out. You can click the link in the description if you're curious about that. But I do have a technical analysis course that's on the market, so feel free to check it out. So this is enticing me to take a little bit of a short. I would like to get above 117, maybe 117.5. And if I look a little closer at the 1 hour, we can start to see what's going on here. So I would already, guys, short signal starts here at 118. I would say that the take profit would be right around 112. So there's about a 5K gap here where I do think we probably will come back down and come into this 113 before pushing higher. So that's how I'm looking at it today on the Friday. Probably not a good idea to take a trade on a Friday going into the weekend. We could see a little bit of weakness, lower volume, but um, I think right now we'll probably wait for this to chop around and see how it opens up on Monday, and then we'll be looking at potentially, a short on the 4 hour for maybe that could last maybe 3 to 7 days. But we'll have to keep track of this. But let's go over. So now that I can kind of start my day, right? I see what happened. We triggered another short selling opportunity, and I want to jump over now to some of my other kind of preset. What do they call these? These are the layouts. So this one I call Chart Prime. It's the black layout. So this again. It shows me another RSI here at the bottom, and it kind of tells me that. Let me zoom out here start off on the daily. So you can see the daily on this indicator is very red. Yeah, it's around 92%. So typically that usually means that we're probably going to see some resistance. It's overbought. It is a very strong move, but you can trust your indicators, right? So in the meantime, I think we will probably chop around here. You can see sometimes we do hang out around these overbought levels for many days, right? And we get momentum higher. But what I'm really looking for is some sort of divergence. And by divergence, what I mean is you can see in the RSI right here as an example, where that first high on the RSI got to 96, then this one was 92, then this one was 89, yet the price was rising. See how the price was rising, but the RSI was actually trending down, diverting. So that kind of signaled right here that potentially there was going to be some downside. So right now we don't see any real divergence on the RSI. We do see that it's overbought, which may signal, hey, maybe consider start taking a little bit of profit off the table. Maybe hedge your bets with a little bit of an overlay, right? You can take a little bit of a short. That way you don't have to exit your long-term holdings, but you can kind of hedge the downside. So a couple different ways I'm thinking about this on the daily. But this is the beginning of a big move, right? I do think that we finally we broke out above this 110 resistance level. And I think this is just the beginning of a bigger move that we're going to see higher going into 125, 150, hopefully. And then like 169 will be a good exit price. If we get up to 200, I think that's going to be the market cycle top. And that's where we're going to want to plug in and really trust our short selling indicator or strategy. But right now, it's still a little bit risky to take a short sale here unless you've got really tight stop losses. But there it is. The daily is pretty overbought. Look at the 4 hour. The 4 hour is getting really overbought. You can see it's starting to get into these like dark burgundy candles, really losing momentum here. On the RSI, volume's tailing off a little bit. It is Friday, so we're probably going to get a little bit less volume today. So I do think we'll open up next week and maybe see a bit of a pullback. Let me just see how this weekly is closing. So this weekly is a very bullish weekly, very, very bullish candle, signaling probably that the next couple weeks could be bullish. Um, but again, this RSI is getting me a little bit nervous. We're coming back up into the 83 level, right? So you can see we went overbought, oversold around 75,000, back up. We kind of sold off a little bit here on the RSI, but it popped it right back up. It held support here at this 60% level. So we got the 50, the 60, and the 75, right? So sometimes that 60% level actually does act as support. So I think that's what happened here on this weekly, and we're pushing higher. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here. Let me just see what's going on this 15-minute chart. So here's a 15-minute chart. So this is where you really want to dial it in if you're thinking about taking a short. Right now, it's a little bit overbought. So like 118, I think would be a good short. If you take a short right around these levels, put your stops above it, could work out for you. However, I'm thinking that we do really want to push higher, into 125 for a couple of reasons. I think that we have some Fibonacci take profit levels. So let me just jump over to the other layout that I have here. So this layout here, we're looking at the shorter time frames. We're at the 5-minute chart. So you can see there's a 15-minute chart coming into that average. So on the 1 hour, we do have a little bit of downside. Look, that 115 looks like it really wants to get tested, right? So from 117 to 115, we could definitely see that move happen. It's a small move, right? On a much bigger scale move that I think will happen, which will take us higher to 125. But I think in the meantime, we might see this start to get a little bit exhausted here for the bulls, and a little bit of a pullback might be necessary. If you jump to the 4 hour, you can see we've had a pretty solid extension away from the moving average, currently hanging out around 111. All right, is this where I have my fibs? It is. So you can see here, guys, that what I've done, right, is since we've clarified that this move from top to bottom rallied back and started to, respect these Fibonacci levels. So as I see that, you have a pretty clear top and bottom to anchor the fibs, top to bottom. And you can pretty much expect that once we break this one, that we're going to pump all the way up into the extension levels on the Fibonacci. So that's exactly what happened. Let's zoom in now on the 1 hour. We can see we got up to this 141. We kind of came back into this 127, up to the 141. And I think the market wants this 161 to really get hit before we can come back and test the 127. However, just keep in mind that we are in these extension levels. It totally makes sense for this move to take place yesterday. You can see we hit this resistance on the one, for the last time, popped above it, and the market just took off. These are 1 hour candles, but I'm telling you, this happened in 5 minutes. So this price just really slid up higher, and then we've got some momentum carry traders trying to jump in on this, but we hit the targets, right? As soon as we broke one above the 111, we were targeting the 117, 118 level. So this move happened. Um, there probably will be a pullback on the lower time frames. I think the longer time frames are still intact to come up higher to the 130, 135 range, like the 261 on the fib extensions. But this gap right here will be difficult to really to break above. I think we'll have to battle in these areas for a little bit before we get this kind of move where we finally make a statement, breakout up into these levels. But I'll be watching this carefully. I think on the weekend we're gonna just stay on the sidelines and watch how this sort of carries out. Um, but I think next week we might start to see some opportunities to take a little bit of a scalp short trade with protection, right? Because the long term trend is still intact for the bulls, so we have to make sure that if we take these little nibbles on the shorts, that we have good protection. Let me see what else. So let me jump over to see what we got going on this layout. Again, this layout is pretty solid. It tracks the RSI and the RSI channels. So you can see, let's start off on the weekly here. You can see, look, we've actually popped outside of the top resistance band on the RSI. So this RSI bands essentially has this green and purple line as the 50% level. So that's, you can see here as we came down in this 50% level on the RSI, we popped above it. And that's what this is, like the trending 50% level, or the point of control for the RSI. So we're outside of these bands. It's not totally unusual. We've seen in the past. Look right here. Right here is it sort of where we got outside of the red resistance bands, but we always want to come back to it. Yeah. Same with here where we pumped up. We had this little gap. We pumped way out of the red, but then we come back to it and touch the green. So ultimately, I think this is solid. It's a really good push. I think we could see a couple weeks where we get more exuberated momentum trading outside of these bands, but ultimately what we're going to be looking for is a retrace down into not only the 50, which will probably come up and meet us around here in Q3, but we also are expecting us to come down into the bottom here, right? The oversold level. Eventually this RSI will get oversold. We actually haven't been oversold on this weekly RSI since the bottom of 2022 right here. You can see, let me just open this up a little bit more, and you can see that over here is the last time we were actually weekly oversold for Bitcoin was October of 2022. So, and since then we've just been holding this 50 as support, right? Overbought, hold the 50. Overbought, hold the 50. Now, we also are noticing that there is divergence on this weekly, meaning this was a top for price, but the top for the RSI was around 80. Now we went to new all-time highs, so the trend went higher, but the RSI didn't get as high, 77. So this is a downward sloping trend on an upward sloping price. So that is cause for concern in terms of the bullish case. However, if this does come up and break above the 78 level, above this little top, then that will be very, very bullish for Bitcoin. The price can get really high if that does happen. But we have to watch out. If this RSI does not get above 74% and starts to turn over, then we're probably going to have to be very cautious for going long, and we're going to have to start to think about reversing into the short position, because I do think that 2026 is going to be very short. It's going to be probably getting oversold RSI around the summer, around actually now, so like a year from now. I do think we'll see an oversold RSI. So we'll have to watch how this RSI plays out. There has been bull runs in the past where we've just seen crazy amount of overbought levels just sustaining at these levels. But eventually, look, we do want to come into oversold on the weekly and reset these indicators as we have in the past. It happens very rarely, but when it happens, look out, because it is ferocious. It is max pain when we're by the time we're in an oversold weekly RSI. The market's talking about Bitcoin going to zero, right? So I'm watching this. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we can say that this weekly candle, especially as we close here in the next 2 days, if we can hold this 117 level, that it is a very good indicator that, hey, we probably got 4, 8, 16 more weeks of bullishness, right? Where we can see this RSI hang out around these overbought levels. But if you're sticking with me, these will be good opportunities to scale out. We're looking to scale out towards the end of this year, just reducing our long-term holdings very, very slowly but steadily, trying to build our average exit price around these levels. I think if we get an average exit price around 150 to 160K, that is going to be golden. That way we'll be able to play the bear market and then hopefully scoop up cheap Bitcoin in 2026. So that's my long-term strategy, right? But let's go see what it looks like on the 4 hour. Looks at this 4 hours getting very overbought. We saw big volume come in. Volume is starting to get a little bit lower, right? Still relatively high volume on these candles, but look, price isn't going anywhere, which means it's probably mostly selling volume, take profit volume. We see wicks, wicks, wicks. These wicks are usually an indicator of some selling activity happening. So I think a lot of this higher volume, especially since price is going nowhere, is probably some profit taking for the longs. It was a solid move. It was a big build up. It took a long time to build up for this move. So there's a lot of people who've had trades on, who've been paying margin costs, right? Who've been keeping their position on this whole time, who finally get their take profit targets. But looking at an RSI like that, you do not want to buy an 83% RSI on the 4 hour, right? I think you can pretty confidently say maybe a couple days of pullback, before we get a confirmed rally. But again, this RSI is very extended out from the top red band here. See how we're way out here in the top red band here. So I think ultimately when this RSI turns over and comes into the 50, this is going to be my price target right here around 110. So I think this 110 level probably will get a retest. It probably will get maybe meet us up around here. So around July 25, I think we'll probably come back down to these levels. So that's like a good little forecast for the next 2 weeks. I think 120 is probably the top for now, just because the indicators are all extremely stretched out. And then the other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to just take a quick little volume profile and see how this. I want to see how this volume has been behaving up here. So let's go ahead and take a volume profile, and then we can see. So I'll zoom in on this, and I'll hide the lowest channel RSI. So now we're looking at the volume profile, guys. So see how the point of control is still very much like right here around 110. Point of control means this is where the most volume was traded. And look at this. So this is what traders really look for with the volume profile is they look for these gaps. This happened in 5 minutes. So see how we pumped on this candle from 13 to 16 and we had no volume really trade in here. So that's a gap. I think 116 is also a level that will get play. I know it's not much, guys. 117 to 116. It's a really small trade, but when you look at it, we're on the 4 hour, right? When you zoom in and you start looking at the 15-minute chart, right, you can see that potentially from getting from, look at this. So potentially just going from 117 to 116 is a pretty ugly, like a pretty, bearish looking move. Yeah. So if we get down to the 116, then maybe we'll pop back up, and then if we get back up, maybe we'll hit resistance, and then maybe we'll come back down into 113 and then 110 where the point of control is. So that's what these bears are looking at. They're looking at a massive gap between the point of control and where we are, and price doesn't just come down and happen and just you know happen really quickly, but sometimes it takes time for these types of moves to develop. But I do think that this 15-minute chart is likely to start to fade, and it could rally. Right, we still have this 2 Fibonacci up there where we took the essentially it's a very long-term Fibonacci. You won't be able to see it on the 15-minute chart, but if you go back to the daily, see how this 2 Fib is coming in. This is a very very old Fibonacci that still is in play, but it's essentially taking the old bear market, right, from here as the top to here, because we were looking for it as extension levels as this price started to build up and pump. We pumped into the 161.8. Look at this. So we know that this fib is still in play. We hit the 161. Look, 141, 161, 127. See how we came into the 127? Pumped up. So now that we got back to this 161, and by the way, you can see these two little support right here on the 161, 1, 2. See that? The 102 level. That's the 161 fib extension. So there's the 2 up there. Now that's a very, very heavy level. So I think what's happening right now is we might get a little bit of resistance just because of the open orders that are sitting there on the sell side. So it might take a little bit of time, but eventually, if that does get up there into the 122 and it hits it and it fills all this sell volume at this level, I think initial resistance has to happen off that level. So I think you know short sellers are still a little bit hurting right now. They've been getting stopped out and they're kind of licking their wounds, but they are itching for another opportunity to get in to short this and to short this recent move and just to short it and just get some of that retracement into some of these levels that haven't really had a good amount of volume trade there yet. So we don't really know what's going to happen. But if we slip through 115, it's going to be pretty quick back down into 113. All right, so that's how I'm looking at Bitcoin right now. There's a little bit potential of higher move up into the 120s. I would like to see that, but I think right now I've got a itchy finger trigger just to take a little short. I'm looking for maybe 2 or 3% return. If we can get it in around 120, that'd be great. That will put us in a great position to put stop losses above this level. But right now, I'm really watching this 15-minute chart. It's starting to move sideways, and I think eventually we'll probably want to pull back into some of these, previous levels that we were talking about. We were saying that when we broke out of 110, we'd push up into 113, right? So I think I think this 113 level is likely to get touched sometime next week. So solid move, like very solid move on the weekly. Let's see how this plays out. I think next week we might see a little bit of a red candle. It could turn green towards the end of the week, but I think next week we're already setting up for a nice little short opportunity. So that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.